Understanding income statement questions. And question number 1. An analyst gathered the following information about a company. We have been given the shares at the start of the period, stock dividend, shares repurchased, and stock split. What is the company's weighted average number of shares outstanding at the end of 2006? Now, first of all, these 20,000 shares, they have been outstanding throughout the year, so they must be given the full weight. Right? Stock dividends, 2,000 times 5%, that will be 1,000. Stock dividend, even they were given on 4th of Jan or maybe 1st of April, whatever could it be in reverse order. So they will be given the full weight, 1,000. Whole year, 12 by 12. Then 5,000 shares were repurchased as a treasury stock. So they will be given the weight of from July onward till December, 6 months. So 5,000 multiplied by 6 by 12. Please make sure 20,000 opening shares, they were outstanding for the whole period. 5% stock dividend, 5% of 20,000, 1,000. And share repurchase, 5,000 purchased on 1st of July. So they will be carrying a weight of 6 months out of 12. Now this is an interesting point. Stock split 2 for 1. Every one share is now being split to 2 and in October, just at the end of, near the end of the year. This stock split will double all the shares. It will double all the shares. So it's going to be 20,000 times 2, 40,000. 10,000 and 12 by 12 times 2 is 2,000. It's 1,000 times 2, 2,000. And this 5,000 will be doubled to 10,000, but since for the period 6 to 12 out of 6 months, so 5,000 times 6 by 12 double, final result will be 5,000. So 40,000 plus 2, 42, less 5 will give you a final number of 37,000. So remember, if it's stock split or reverse stock split, it will affect all the shares previously issued for the purpose of calculation of weighted average number of shares. So that makes 37 to be the correct option. Don't worry if you didn't get the fuller idea. There are many questions coming and they will refine your understanding. No problem. Advantage Corporation's capital structure was as follows. Outstanding shares common were same in the last year and the current year. Convertible preferred stock and convertible bonds. Right. It said during 2005, Advantage paid dividend of $3 per share on its preferred stock. How many preferred stock were there? Convertible preferred stock, 10,000. So 10,000 times 3 gives us preferred stock dividend of $30,000. Then the preferred shares are convertible into 20,000 shares of common stock. Fine. Then there are bonds, 8% bonds that are also convertible into 30,000 common shares. So let us calculate for the interest saved also for the purpose of diluted earnings per share. So 8% bonds, and this is the value of the bonds. 8% of 1 million gives you 80,000 as interest. This is your interest which will be saved in case of diluted earnings per share, and this is $30,000 is your preferred stock dividend. Right. What do we need? Net income for the period was 850. Assume the income tax is 30%. Calculate Advantage basic and diluted earnings per share. How do we calculate the basic earnings per share? IACS. IACS is the income attributable or available to the common stockholders. For that we take 850, this one, and from this we deduct the preferred stock dividend and simply divide it with the weighted average number of shares, which is 110, because the numbers remain the same. So 850 less 30, 820 divided by 110 gives you 7.45. This is your basic earning per share. So if you just want to guess, either it's going to be A or B. In order to get the exact result, we need to calculate the diluted earning per share. For diluted earning per share, take 850 and don't add back the preferred stock dividend, because this amount 850 is before the preferred stock dividend. So if you deduct, then you have to add, so just keep it 850. Don't add 30 to it, because this 850 is before the deduction of preferred stock dividend, right? In the denominator, we will have 110 as our weighted average number of shares. Now, since we want to calculate the diluted earning per share, How many common stock will be there once these preferred stock are converted? 20,000. This will become as a denominator. Preferred stock dividend saved is already included, so don't add 30 again. It will make your solution incorrect. These convertible bonds, they will be converted into 30,000 common shares, so the denominator will be 30,000. Since this 80,000 interest is before tax, it has to be converted into after tax basis by multiplying it with 1 minus tax rate, that is 1 minus 30%. Now solve this out. 850 plus 80,000, 70%, and divide it with the total of 130, 160. And your final result should be $5.66. So that makes B to be the correct option. Right. Oregon Corporation stock transactions during the year were as follows. 320 shares outstanding. Okay, January, they will carry the full weight. April 1, 142 reverse stock split. Reverse stock split means every 2 old shares are now converted to a single 1 share. It's 1 for 2. Previously, in the previous question, were 2 for 1. For every 1 old share, you get 2 new ones. But this time, 2 old shares are being consolidated into a single share. 1 for 2. It's called reverse stock split. Okay, then acquisition of Smith Incorporated in exchange of issuance of 60,000 shares. We acquired this company by giving our 60,000 shares. And then we issued certain shares for cash. We need to calculate the weighted average number of shares. Alright, what you're going to do? Since these shares 320,000, they were outstanding for the whole year, so we're going to multiply it for 12 by 12. Right? Acquisition of Smith Incorporated in exchange of issuance of 60,000 shares. These shares were issued when there was already the reverse stock split. Right? This 60,000 number of shares, they do not need to be considered for reverse stock because reverse stock split happened on 1st of April. So this July 1st, 60,000 is already the consolidated, a bigger share. It doesn't require any treatment for the reverse stock split effect because it goes for the previous period, not prospectively. Alright, then we have 30,000 shares issued for cash. So remember, these 60,000 shares were issued on 1st of July, so they have a weight of 6 out of 12. These 30,000 shares issued for cash on 1st of October, so it means they will carry a weight of 3 only. 3 out of 12. Now we haven't yet given the impact of reverse stock split. This effect of reverse stock split will only be applicable on these shares. So since it's 1 for 2 reverse stock split, so you need to multiply this with 1 by 2. So these 320 shares with the full weight of the whole year 12 by 12 will be 1 over 2 is going to be 160. 320 will become half in number because there is 1 for 2 reverse stock split. Then these acquisition Smith stock, these 60,000 shares, they were outstanding for just 6 months out of 12 and they are already the bigger shares, which were the effect of stock split, reverse stock split has already been there in these shares. So it's going to be 60,000 times 6 by 12 is 30. And these cash issue or the right issue were outstanding for just 3 months out of 12. So 30,000 times 3 by 12 will give you 7,500. So adding all these 160 plus 30 plus 7,500 will give you a total of 197,500. That gives you C to be the correct option. There could be various ways of doing it. Whichever method you are comfortable with is perfectly fine as long as you get the right answer. The first in, first out method of inventory valuation or the expense recognition, the first in, first out expense recognition method for the inventories best describes the physical flow of goods if the customer typically purchase these units. We discussed that first in, first out method best approximates the physical flow of goods because the items which we receive first, these are the items that are issued first, right? Just like in the shops, the items that are bought first, the shopkeeper will sell those items first. So as the fresh ones are kept, older ones are issued first, right? So in the same order, the units are produced. First in, first out. Items received first are processed and completed into finished goods first. So this is the perfect option without looking for even A and B. Moving on. Lawson Incorporated net income for the year was 1.06 million with these many shares outstanding. Lawson had 2,000 shares of 8% 1,000 par value convertible preferred stock that were outstanding the entire year. Each share of preferred is convertible into 50 shares of common stock. How many shares are there preferred stock? 2000. 2000 times 50, it means 100,000 common shares will become available once these preferred stock are converted into common stock. We need to calculate the diluted earning per share. So diluted earning per share is equal to net income, which is given as 1,060,000 divided by the weighted average number of shares, which is already given 420. But since we need to calculate the diluted earning per share, so these preferred stock will be converted into 100 ordinary shares, and converting these shares into ordinary shares will save us the preferred stock dividend, since this is the net income from which no preferred stock dividend has been deducted. So please do not add preferred stock dividend back. No need to add preferred stock dividend, because this is already your net income from which no preferred stock dividend has been deducted. So dividing 160,000 with the 520 base should give you the diluted earning per share of 2.038, and this could be rounded off to 2.04, and that matches with your option C. Do gains and losses as well as expenses appear on the income statement? Gains, losses, expenses, revenue, they all appear on income statement. Right? We discussed this in our reading studies. It's a very straightforward question. A is the right answer. Next. Which of the following statement regarding making changes in accounting principle is least accurate? Least accurate. When it's change in accounting principle, the general rule is the retrospective application. It's a true statement. For accounting principle change in accounting standard from one GAAP to another, from one IFRS to another, this requires retrospective treatment. It is true. Changes in accounting estimates are now treated the same as changes in accounting principle? No. Changes in accounting estimates are treated prospectively, whereas change in accounting principles, change in a reported entity, it is treated as retrospectively. This is false statement. A change in accounting principle is a change from one generally accepted accounting principle to another. So the firm making change must justify the change in notes, and it must be applied retrospectively. This is true as well. Must be applied retrospectively. So the false statement, the least accurate one, is B. Next, which of the following data are least likely to be read directly from the common size income statement? Net profit margin, net profit upon sales, yes. Net profit as a percentage of sale, yes, it is. It will be found there on the common size income statement. Ratio of selling and general administrative expenses to sales, again, selling, general and administrative expenses as a percentage of sales will be there. But effective rate, this isn't there. No, effective tax rate basically is equal to your tax expense divided by your pre-tax income. Since the dynamic is pre-tax income, not sales, hence you won't have effective tax rate on your common size income statement. So that is C, that you won't find on your common size income statement, and that's your right answer. Next, the approach to revenue recognition in the converged accounting standard that were issued in May 2014 is best described as what? Rule-based approach? No. The US GAAP, the previous revenue recognition standard in the US GAAP, it was rule-based. New converged standard, it is principle-based. Rule-based means checklist approach. This done, this done, this done. Okay, now recognize the revenue. Under the principle-based, we are given the general principles, ideas according to which we determine whether the revenue should be recognized or not. So instead of a checklist-based approach, the new converged standard revenue recognition is principle-based. That is C. Next. Matrix Incorporated common size income statement for the year just ended shows these comparative numbers in percentages. Common size income statement for 2 years, 2002 and 2001. All right, what are we required to do? Analysis of this data indicates that from 2001 to 2002, the effective tax rate has increased. effective tax rate has increased. We cannot judge from the given data whether the effective tax rate has increased or not, because these are the comparative numbers. All numbers that you see here are given as a percentage of sales. So we cannot determine from this data that the tax rate has increased or decreased. We can't say that. Right? So this is not possible. Cost of goods sold is increased. Cost of goods sold from 55 to 60. This has gone up in percentage, but we cannot say in absolute dollar terms, because since the common size income statement is given in percentage, we cannot give any conclusion based upon the absolute dollar amounts. Cost of goods sold percentage might have gone up, but who knows what were the actual numbers behind these, because these are all comparative numbers. We can't say that. Interest expense per dollar of sale. Yes, per dollar. It's a relative measure. Interest expense as a per dollar of sale. Previously it was 15% of sales. Now it is just 6% of sales. This is right. Interest expense as a percentage of sale, relatively speaking, it has declined. Yes, that's the right answer. C is the correct option. Right, moving on. Molding company's net income was 13.82 million net income. 2.6 million shares were outstanding. The average share price was 58, that is average market price, AMP. Molding had 10,000 options to purchase 10,000 shares, each of 40 per share. It means this is the exercise price, EP. Molding company's diluted earning per share is to be calculated. We know diluted earning per share is equal to your net income, 1,382,000. We have been given these shares outstanding, 2.6 million. Now we need to calculate the shares that will be available once the options are exercised. That is 58 average market price minus exercise price upon average market price multiplied by how many share would there be? Each option entitles you to get 10 shares. So 10,000 options will get you 100,000 shares. So simplifying this will give you 31034.48, which is approximately 31034. This will serve as a denominator, or if you just can give the same number here. So 13820,000 upon the sum of the denominator will give you 5.252. 5.252. That is your diluted earning per share, which matches perfectly with your option B. And B it is. Next. The Better Building Company has a contract to build a building for 100 million. This is the sale price of the contract, or the revenue to be expected from the contract. The estimated cost of the project is 75 million. Right. In the first year of the project, BB had a cost of 30 million. This is the cost incurred in the first year. Better Building Company's reported profit for the first year of the contract using the percentage of completion method. First of all, we will have to determine the percentage of completion. For that, I told you the formula is cost incurred so far divided by total estimated cost to complete. Total estimated cost to complete. We incurred cost of 30 million, whereas the estimated cost to complete was 75 million. 30 million is what percent of 75 million? 40%. It means we have done 40% of our work. This is the extent of completion. If you are required to calculate what is the revenue you will recognize, you will take 40% of 100 million. That will give you 40 million of revenue. Since we need the profit figure, so in order to calculate profit, you need to calculate the overall profit of the project, 100 million less 75 million. So the project's profit is 25 million, out of which you have earned 40% of this. So 40% of 25 million is 10 million. This is the profit you can recognize in the current period, and this is the revenue. This is the profit. So since we needed the profit, that makes C to be our correct option, and as you can see, C it is. Next. Barracuda Corporation, a US corporation, owns subsidiary located in Germany. The Germany subsidiary financial statements are maintained in euros. If the euros recently appreciated relative to the US dollar, how would the unrealized translation gain, mind the word translation gain, affects Barracuda's retained earnings and the total stockholders' equity? Since it's a foreign currency translation gain, it doesn't go to the retained earning. Murphy effect on retained earning, it's an item of other comprehensive income. There are 4 items we discussed in detail. So one of them is the foreign currency translation. So since it's a gain, so it will increase your OCI, and OCI is reported as a part of equity. Other comprehensive income balance is reported as a part of your shareholders' equity. So it will increase your total stockholder equity. So that makes A to be the correct option. And A it is. We have been given the data. Ignoring taxes, calculate Milan's net income and comprehensive income, not other comprehensive income. Okay, let us identify these items one by one. Gross profit from sales is a part of net income calculation. I will add it. Gross operating expenses is a deduction to calculate net income. Unrealized loss from foreign currency translation. Since it's a loss, it's an OCI deduction. Dividend received from available for sale securities. Since it's dividend received, it will be reported as a part of net income. Net income plus. Increase in minimum pension liability. Increase in liability credit, loss debit. I always see things from debit credit perspective. That's what an accountant normally do. So it's an increase indicating a loss, so it will be reported as a part of OCI negative. Interest expense is deducted from net income negative. Acquired treasury stock for 25,000 more than the original book value. There are 2 ways to treat treasury stock, and that's not the agenda for this. Will affect your stockholders' equity balances individually, but it will not affect your other comprehensive income or your net income. So this item is just to confuse you guys. Unrealized gain from available for sale debt securities. 20,000. It's an OCI addition. Let us calculate the net incomes and OCIs, and then we will give our conclusion. So net income, adding 600 plus 15,000 less 25,000. It gives you a total of 490. 30,000 negative, 45,000 negative, and 20,000 positive. It gives you overall net OCI of negative 55. So your net income is 490. That is either A or B. Since we need the comprehensive income, which is the total of these two, 490 minus 55 will give you the balance of your comprehensive income. So 490 minus 55 gives you 435. Remember, net income plus other comprehensive income is equal to your comprehensive income. So this is going to be 435. That makes A to be the correct option. Right, A it is. Next. An analyst prepares the following common size income statement for Perez company. Okay. Based on this information, Perez improving net profit margin is most likely. Profit margin is increasing 15, 16, 17. It is because of what? First, improving gross margins. We haven't been given gross margins, so we can calculate them. 100 less 50 is 50. 100 less 52. Cost of goods sold 48. 100 less 53, 47. Our gross margins are falling, not increasing. This is wrong. Gross margins are falling 50 to 48, 48 to 47. Controlling operating expenses. Operating expenses are given here 16%, 12%, and 9%. It makes sense. First they were 16% of sales, now they are 12% of sales, now they are 9%. So they are showing a downward trend. So yes, we don't have absolute dollar numbers for these, but whatever they are falling with the reference to percentage of sales. They are falling compared to the sales, 16, 12 to 9. So that appears to be the correct option. Greater financial leverage. We cannot determine the financial leverage from the given data. So it means the correct option is B, and B is your right answer. Where in the financial statement should a firm recognize the unrealized gain and losses on the cash flow hedging derivative, OCI, and the unrealized gain and losses on the available for sale debt securities, OCI? Both of these will be reported as a part of other comprehensive income. We have agreed there are 4 items reported in OCI: foreign currency translation, gain and loss on defined pension plans, effective portion of cash flow hedge, and available for sale debt securities remeasurement, gain and loss. That makes B to be the correct option. Next, We have been given certain items and we are required to calculate the net income and comprehensive income. Similar to the one we have done shortly. Net income means we take revenue, deduct cost of goods sold, deduct operating expenses, and we add the gain on sale of equipment. 100,000 less 40 less 20 plus 1 gives you a net income of 41. So your net income is 41,000. And your other comprehensive income has these three items. Unrealized gain added. Unrealized loss on the cash flow hedging derivatives, outflow, means it's not an outflow basis, it's negative. And dividend paid to common stockholders, this is not a part of OCI. Just these two. 5,000 plus 3 negatives, which means a total of OCI net is 2,000. So since we need the comprehensive income, so the total of these 41 plus 2, 43 would be the answer. 43 here, and I think it should be C. Yes, 43 and 41. So that makes C to be the correct option. And C it is. Next. The Camel Building Company has contract to build a building for $100 million. The estimate of the cost is $75 million. In the first year, the project, Camel had a cost of $30 million. Camel reported profit for the first year of the contract using the completed contract method. Remember, under the completed contract method, profit is only recognized when the project is complete. Since it's the first year and there is no indication that the project is completed, under the completed contract method, profit is only reported upon the completion of the contract. Since there is no indication, so we are not going to recognize any profit. 0. A. Right? Moving on. At the beginning of 2007, Thunderbird Company started a 3-year construction project. The following data relates to the project: contract price, costs incurred so far, progress billing billed to the customer for whom we are working on the project, and collection of progress billings. And out of the 40 billed, we received 37 million. 3 is due. Because of cost overruns, Thunderbird cannot reliably estimate the cost of the project. However, Thunderbirds expect that its costs incurred so far are recoverable. What amount of revenue should Thunderbird recognize for the year ended 2007 under US GAAP and under the IFRS? Please remember, we learned that under the IFRS, completed contract cannot be used. Under IFRS, what revenue can you recognize depends upon what have you spent so far. Right? So remember, first let us do IFRS. IFRS says when the contract's future is indeterminable. Right? Whatever so far has been incurred can be considered as a revenue, which means 50 million. Right? Under the US GAAP, since the project is indeterminate, we will be using the completed contract method. Since it has not yet been completed, Thunderbird cannot reliably estimate the project cost. So under this US GAAP, we will treat it as a completed contract method and we will not consider any revenue now. So it means either A or C, since C makes the perfect combination. So it means C is the right answer. Moving on. The Widget company had the net income of 1 million for the period. There were 1 million shares of Widget's common stock outstanding for the entire period. If there are 100,000 options outstanding with an exercise price of 40, what is the diluted earning per share if the common stock had an average mark price of it? Quite a repetitive question, so we need to calculate the diluted earning per share. For that, we have the earnings, net income, 1 million. We have 1 million shares outstanding. We just need to add the result of this. Exercise price is 40, average market price is 50. 50 minus 40 by 50 times how many options? That will be converted to shares, 100,000. Simplify this and you should get 20,000. So this will be added to the denominator. 1 million upon 1.02 million gives you a diluted earning per share of 0.98 per share. And that makes A to be the correct option. Next, the All Faith Church is building a new church for $2 million on land acquired several years ago. This is the contract price. The contractor estimates that the cost will be 1.3 million. 2 million versus 1.3 means the expected profit on the project is $700,000. And the project is to be completed over 2 years period with the payment split evenly between the 2 years. Right? 2 years project. During the first year, the total cost incurred was $700,000. During the second year, the contractor experienced cost overrun. We were expecting a total cost of 1.3 million, out of which 700,000 was spent in the first year. But in the second year, we spent $1 million. So the total cost, instead of 1.3, we ended up spending 1.7 million. Using the percentage of completion method, how much revenue and income should the contractor recognize in the second year of the project? Revenue and income are to be required for the second year, so this question will take time. Make a table like this, revenue and profit for both years, for year 1 as well as year 2. How much did we complete in the first year? We incurred, remember the formula to assess the cost of completion, the percentage of completion. The cost incurred so far divided by the total estimated cost. 700,000 was incurred in the year 1. The estimated cost in the year 1 was 1.3 million. So multiplying this with whatever the percentage come, multiplying it with the 2 million contract price will give you the revenue recognized in first year 1076923. What would be the profit now? Profit will be equal to revenue, which is 1076923, minus the cost incurred in the first year, that is $700,000. So the difference between these will be profit, that is 376,923. This is the first year profit. Do not go for B. B is the first year revenue and first year profit. We need to calculate the profit and revenue for the second year. How much revenue and income should the contractor recognize in the second year of the project? Now in the second year, what would be the revenue? Total revenue is 2 million, out of which 1076923 has been recognized in the previous period. So the revenue to be recognized in the second year is 2 million. Total revenue, out of which 1076923 has been previously recognized. The difference between these two is 923,077. Go for A. That's the right answer. But let us calculate the profit also. Okay, now this is the revenue, 923,077. What is the cost you incurred in the second year? 1 million. Because revenue minus cost is your profit. So 923,077 less 1 million gives you a loss of 76,923. So this is the loss, this is the revenue for the second period. That makes A to be the correct option for sure, and A is the right answer. According to the Financial Accounting Standard Board, what is the appropriate balance sheet treatment for available for sale securities, and where are the unrealized gains and losses reported? Remember, available for sale debt securities are reported as a part of OCI, so it's other comprehensive income, not amortized, rather they are reported at fair value. Any fair value gain and loss is reported as a part of other comprehensive income. So this one is wrong, it's not net income. So any fair value remeasurement of available for sale debt securities, it is reported in other comprehensive income. That makes C to be the correct option. Red Oak Corporation is a furniture manufacturer located in Canada. Red Oak is financed with combination of debt and equity. The debt consists of unsecured zero coupon bonds that mature in 20 years. For income tax purposes, interest on the bond is deductible when accrued. Red Oak's equity consists of common stock and preferred stock. No dividends have ever been paid on Red Oak's common stock. However, dividends are paid quarterly to the preferred stockholders. Now, this is the required part. Should the accrued interest on the zero coupon bond and the dividends paid to the preferred stockholders be reported as a non-operating component? It's a manufacturer. It's a non-financial firm. Any interest accrued is reported as a part of continuing operations, continuing expenses. So accrued expense will be reported as a part of income expenses, income statement. Yes, it's a part of net income. What about the preferred stock dividend? Preferred stock dividend paid, it is given out of the net income. It is treated as an outflow in financing activities. It is not reported as a part of income statement. No. Dividend, whether preferred or common, they are not charges against income. Rather, they are the charges against the retained earnings. Any dividend paid, property dividend, stock dividend, cash dividend, they are paid out of retained earnings. So wrong. It's not charge against the net income. So it's going to be A, and A is your right answer. Next. Football Contractors Incorporated, which reports under the US GAAP, has contracted to build a stadium for the city of Washburn. The contract price is 100 million and the costs are estimated to be 60 million. Expected profit is 40 million. Costs are not assured, however, because there is a material risk which football contractor has assumed. The groundwater problems might slow construction and increase cost by as much as 40 million. So the total cost could go up from 60 to 40, 100 million. So what will be the profit in this? In 2004, the first year of the agreement, football contractor incorporated billed 30 million, received 20 million out of it, and incurred 15 million in costs. This is what was billed, this is what was received, and this is what was incurred in cost. Now, for 2004, Football Contractors Incorporated should recognize revenue from the City of Washburn transaction in the amount of what? Since we are talking about the US GAAP, under the given situation, we cannot make a reliable measure of the total cost because of some waterlogging and salinity issue. Since we cannot determine the total estimated cost, the only option we have is the completed contract. And since this project is not completed, so any amount received or billed, none of it can be considered as a revenue. So Murphy revenue, no profit, zero. We will be using completed contract method. That makes 0 to be the correct option. Okay, Young Distributor Incorporated issued convertible bonds 2 years ago, and those bonds are the only potentially dilutive security Young has issued. In 2005, Young's basic earning per share and diluted earning per share were identical. In 2005, your basic earning per share and diluted earning per share, they were the same, but not in 2004, not in the previous year. Which of the following factor is least likely to explain the difference between the basic and diluted earning per share? Bonds were redeemed by Young Distributor at the beginning of 2005. Since they were redeemed in the beginning of 2005, not in 2004, so in this case in 2005, your basic earning per share and diluted will be same since the bonds have been redeemed, gone, finished. So this is a true statement. We are looking for least likely. This is a true statement. Average market price of Young's common stock increased in 2005. Since we are talking about the bonds, conversion of bonds doesn't involve any market price changes of stock. This is the false statement. This is not the reason why there was a difference in 2004 and 2005. Bonds were anti-dilutive. When the bonds are anti-dilutive, it means they won't affect your diluted earning per share. In this case, again, your basic earning per share will be equal to your diluted earning per share. So A and C, they are not likely to be this. B is the odd man out. This is least likely. Because of A and C, your BEPS and DEPS is same in 2005, but B is totally odd amongst these given options. Next, CXW Incorporated issued 9986 warrants, which were outstanding for the entire year with an exercise price of 38, that is your EP. Each warrant is convertible into one share. The average market price was 52, that is AMP, and its price at the end of the year was 45. We need AMP, average market price, not the closing price. In the calculation of CXW diluted earning per share, how many new shares would theoretically need to be issued to facilitate warrants of conversion? So we know the formula. It is the average market price minus 38 is the exercise price upon 52, and multiply this with the number of warrants. Simplification of this will give you 2688.5. If rounded off gives you 2689. That gives B to be the correct option.